welcome to our interview, another interview with a specialist from forestry research. Today we'll be talking to Professor Bart Muys. He is the head of the Forest, Nature and Landscape Division at the University of Leuven. Yes. Welcome. Thank you for agreeing to talk to us.
Pleasure.
Could you tell us something about your background or what led you into forestry ecological research?
Yeah, already in secondary school I got a strong interest in nature, let's say, thanks to some teachers that were very dedicated. I became active in the local nature group of the school, and from there I was convinced that I wanted to study forestry. So I went to the Faculty of Bioscience Engineering at the University of Ghent, and then got my master in forestry. I did a PhD in forest ecology at the same university, a postdoc. Then I left science for a few years to lead a small sustainability policy institute in Brussels, to come then to KU Leuven almost 30 years ago as a professor in forest ecology and management. Yeah.
If we move to Belgium, how would you characterize the state of forestry here? Around the world during these times? What do you see as the pressures, the threats or progress that we're making?
Yeah, there's of course a lot to say about that, so let's try to keep it short. But Belgium has about 20% of its area under forest, which is much lower than the European average. In the north of the country, in the lowland of Flanders, it's even much less, so we can say this is a really urban area, and the little forests we have are like multifunctional for recreation mainly. And in the south, in the Ardennes, in the Wallonie region, we still have quite substantial forests with also a rather important economic function still. So I think forests in Belgium are well managed or professionally managed, but the main concern is the external threats. Belgian forests are very much exposed to atmospheric pollution. There was the acid rain in the 1970s and 80s, but there's still a lot of nitrogen deposition because of this intensive livestock traffic and so on. So we have some of the most, the highest nitrogen depositions in the world, which is very much acidifying and eutrophying the forests. Very negative effect on biodiversity in our forests. And then I would say the lack of forest is also a problem, because not every citizen has sufficient access to green for their health, let's say. Yeah.
Could we move on to some recent research of yours? You had a new publication this year in March called "Climate Change Will Increase Forest Disturbances in Europe Throughout the 21st Century." I mean, you just referred to some of that now. That wildfires are the main agent driving future forest disturbance, followed by insect outbreaks and storms. So, according to this research, the disturbed areas of forests are predicted to more than double in size relative to the recent past. We've already seen some heat waves of 40 degrees and above, and widespread wildfires across the southern Mediterranean, so Italy, Spain, Greece, the Aegean Islands, Turkey and the Levant over the past few summers. Does your research indicate that this will continue, or even would you agree with the statement that the Sahara Desert seems to be moving northwards?
Yeah, a big question with lots of aspects. But so in my overview of Belgian forests, I didn't speak about climate change yet, because climate change is a relatively recent or new threat. I would even say that at this moment, most effects of climate change so far on Belgian forests have been positive, because there's increase of CO2 concentrations in the atmosphere, increase in temperature, the productivity of our forests has increased. And so if we look at tree rings, at growth since the year 1900 until 2000, then you see a tremendous increase in the productivity. But in the last 20 years it has come to a plateau, and even for some species is going slightly down. And the slightly down is indeed related to the first negative effects of climate change that we start seeing, and it's all related to droughts. So 2003 already 1 year, 2018 there were some extreme summer drought events, also spring drought events, like also this year again. And yes, our native species are not well prepared to that, and we start to see mortality more than what we used to see. And we have another paper that showed really a kind of tipping point. It was published already in 2018 in Global Change Biology, where we showed for Belgian oak and beech forests that, well, one, that the vitality is overall decreasing in recent years, but that before the monoculture forests were more vital. And now in the new condition, after the tipping point, is the other way around. The more mixed forests have a better vitality. So we consider that we moved from a regime, from a system with productive monocultures to a new regime with resilient mixtures. So mixture becomes very crucial in the European forests of the future. Foresters have invested a lot in creating monocultures to be maximally productive, but we see now that this recipe is not working anymore. Resilience becomes very crucial, taking advantage of the insurance of mixed systems. Also, people that play on the stock exchange know, don't put all your eggs in the same basket, but it's the same in forestry. Mixed systems have lower risk, and we see also real complementarity effects. Species work together, they collaborate. Some species have deeper roots, they can pump up water from deeper soil layers, they release it in the upper soil layer and becomes available for the other species. So you can really speak about cooperation between trees in a mixed system. So that is really the call we make through to forest managers all over Europe. Start to mix your forest if you have not done so. And yes, then we come on the topic of the disturbances, because most of the climate change research so far has been focusing on, let's say, the average trends of vitality and growth and so on. But climate change is not working like that. Climate change is more working with the extremes, and there these disturbances come in. But that's very hard to model. Most forest models, they are good at predicting growth, maybe vitality, but predicting extreme events, disturbances, is extremely difficult. So the previous generation of models was not able to do that. And I think that's the breakthrough really of this new paper in Science magazine, that it's a new generation of forest models that is able to also consider extreme events in a very detailed way. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And as regards to this, encouragement of having mixed forest and moving away from these mono-species forests. So what kind of cooperation do you observe or desire between universities or institutions on this subject? Is there traction gaining now?
Well, the collaboration between scientists is tremendous. This mixture research, we call it diversity function research, because it's all about what is the role of biodiversity in an ecosystem, and specifically the functional role of diversity. What is diversity bringing to a system? And because diversity is always related to heritage. We speak about nature conservation, protection of rare species, and so on and so forth. But it's important to start seeing biodiversity for the reason why it is there. Because by trial and error through evolution, the biodiversity is there because it has a function, because it's useful. Otherwise, it would have been eliminated by evolutionary processes. Biodiversity is there because biodiverse systems are just more successful. And Yeah, we have started already. Yeah, it's almost 20 years ago with the first experiments where we manipulate the level of diversity in a forest. So you have to imagine we plant a new forest and we plant little blocks of monocultures, little blocks of 2 species, 4 species, and so on and so forth. And we replicate that, and then we measure all kinds of responses in terms of productivity, stability, resilience, associated biodiversity, and all what you name it. And so nowadays we have a worldwide team of experiments. It's called the TreativeNet. It's my colleague, Professor Chris Verheyen from the University of Ghent, which is coordinating this group. And we at KU Leuven, we are also part of that. We have here in Belgium, in the lowland, in the Kempen area, one of these sets. We helped another experiment in the Mediterranean, in Sardinia. It's the only Mediterranean. And then we managed one in Ethiopia as well, in dryland forest. Yeah. But so overall, there's more than 1 million trees in, I don't know, at this moment maybe 50 experiments in all biomes of the world. So the scientists are really looking at this, but the big problem is the translation to the practice, from science to practice. The evidence is tremendous, but now we need to convince the plantation forest managers worldwide of the advantages of that, and that's still a work to do. The FAO, the World Food and Agriculture Organization, published already together with us a special issue of the Forest Journal, especially on that topic, creating mixed plantations. But yeah, even in our country we see here that the wood industry is still very much on this idea that the industry can dictate which trees we should have in the forest. But yeah, it's nonsense, because if the climate dictates that spruce, for example, will not grow here in our region anymore, it's useless to ask the people to plant spruce and spruce. The spruce will not grow anymore, and it will only be economic loss in the long term.
Yeah. This seems to strongly support what I've read about agroforestry, that the benefits of agroforestry and growing crops and foods, nuts, berries and so on is actually very, very positive for the farming communities nearby, that they have a much healthier soil, much better soil health, for example, and that translates into better productivity.
Yeah, agroforestry is really based on the same principles and concepts as this mixed plantations. Even it's even more interesting in the sense that they also work with layers, with what we call structural diversity. And so the trees then give a shade to certain plants that cannot withstand the full radiation of the sun. So you also have this kind of facilitation. Some plants help the others. You have in the agroforestry, very typical is that you have nitrogen fixers that are able to take nitrogen gas from the atmosphere and put it into plant digestible or uptakeable nitrogen. And yeah, that's the whole idea. Unfortunately, I would say that yeah, this deep scientific evaluation of facilitation, complementarity, insurance effects in agroforestry systems is maybe less evolved. So less very hard scientific evidence to go to convince farmers to go in that direction. They are hesitant. They very often the problem with agroforestry is the upfront investments, because trees go slow. The first 10 years you put a lot of money, and the return is only coming later on. That's why our government, they subsidize agroforestry systems, but there's not much interest among farmers so far.
Yes, I think that agrees with what I've read, that it's still relatively marginalized.
Mm-hmm.
It's maybe given a token indication of appreciation, but especially in middle-income countries and lower-income countries, and this actually performs quite an important role that is still marginalized.
Yeah, it works very well in subsistence farming system. we must say that creating mixed systems is also more complicated, and it leads to new challenges, especially in the harvesting, in the commercialization. You need to grade and separate the different products. So I think the main challenges and also worries are there. Can we do it in a commercially viable way? And I think, there we need maybe also some social scientists, some economists that calculate it and see how it can be done. But probably also new technology, new machines for harvesting, for doing it in a finer way. Of course, agriculture also found solutions in the past to have like a compromise between the monoculture and the mixture by doing, for example, crop rotation. In fact, crop rotation is a mixture over time. Every year you put different crops, so over time it's a mixture. And if different farmers, neighbors do different things at the same time, also in the space, maybe you have small monocultures, but adjacent is already another crop. So like that you can also create a rather stable system. But yeah, the sad thing is that modern agriculture even goes away from this old agriculture wisdom that we know already since hundreds of years, that you have to do crop rotation and not do. You see more and more, especially abroad in countries with large agriculture areas, but also in Belgium, more and more corn after corn after corn after corn. And so the only way to keep that system going is a lot of fertilizer, a lot of biocide, and then we have all these other secondary environmental problems that are created by this.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've mentioned some of the obstacles to progress if we return to forestry and this disturbance risk. What other obstacles might there be apart from persuading policymakers to actually become more serious in the ways in which they encourage, protect and manage forests?
Well, let's maybe go to the example of the adaptation of the tree species in forestry. Because the question is, we have a very strict list of what are native tree species. Even for Flanders, Belgium, we have a list. These are the native species. It's a very restricted list. Will this species still perform in the next 100 years? And if not, what to do? So that's why we think about assisted migration, because the climate change is going so fast. The speed of natural migration of the tree species is much slower than that. It's maybe 20 times slower. If you consider that in the lowland, climate change goes like, maybe 1 degree Celsius per 30 years. I think that's the speed we are going now. So that means that in 30 years time, the climate zones in the lowland shift like 300 to 400 kilometers. It's tremendous. If you consider that most tree species, from a natural point of view, so with wind and bird dispersal of the seeds, they can move only a few kilometers per year, then you can see that the speed of the climate change is much faster than the speed of the migration of the species. In the oceans that goes much easier and quicker. In the oceans there's a good spatial contiguity, so migrations go fast. And we see already now that in the North Sea we have other fish population than we used to have. Before we were eating cod, and the cod is now... the shift apparently is already 1,000 kilometers with the climate change we had so far. And so our diets will have to shift if we still want to use fisheries, and more octopus, more calamaris, less fish. Assisted migration. There's a lot of hesitation to experiment with species that come more from southern areas. And there you see the obstacles. There's obstacles from nature conservation because we consider the species as non-native. We fear that those species do not have the associated biodiversity that was in co-evolution with them, so that's the reason why we don't like them from a nature conservation point of view. Then the forestry business also don't like it. As I said, the industry works with a very limited number of tree species. The whole industry is based on that. They consider it too expensive to start new technologies, for example, adapting more to broadleaf, because the whole shift is in fact very much from conifer to broadleaf. Also in Scandinavia there will be more broadleaf, and the whole industry is based on conifer, so they see a very big challenge there. And then a third obstacle is the forest managers themselves. And we have done a survey already in 2018. It's also a nice published paper. We interviewed Belgian foresters and then all over Europe. And it was very much the same. Do you believe in climate change? Very much so. Do you think that climate change will have a tremendous effect on your forest in terms of disturbance and so? Yes, very much so. Do you think it's very needed to change your management, your tree species composition? Yes, strongly so. A little bit less. We go from 90% conviction of climate change to 80% of we should do something will happen, we should do something. 60% yes, it has to be done. And then, have you done already something? Less than 25%. And then we also asked why. And there's several reasons, but mainly a lack of information, doubts if it will be successful. So again, this information transfer from science to practice is really lacking.
And also, I imagine this new changes would require extra funding,
which
of course, may be regarded as risky.
Yeah. But so you see, the government is doubting because of nature conservation reasons. So the subsidy system is also trying to keep what we have. The industry is hesitating. The forester is hesitating. So in one word, we are in a big lock-in. Nothing happens.
There's almost not quite a denial, but dragging feet to actually make the move.
And so we want to experiment a bit with oaks from a few hundred kilometers south of us in our own university forest. Yeah. We don't get the permits of the government because it's in it's in some level of protected zone. And we can't.
And it would be regarded as an invasive species, and therefore
they are not invasive, but they are exotic. They are not in the list of native. So I think some fundamental rethinking of all that is needed in policy at all levels.
How aware do you think the public is of this unfolding risk? Not only across the Mediterranean, which sees regular fires, for example, but in Northern Europe. Do you think there's great awareness of these issues?
I think there's quite big awareness of climate change and the possible risks of that. The risks related to forests, I think, are much less known. For example, not many people know that even in our areas here, the fire risk is increasing and could become a problem. The biggest risk here is wind risk, but it will, well, there's a bit of discussion if it will further increase, but anyway it will stay very important. And another one that we see that is very problematic are the pests and diseases. We get new pests and diseases, or old pests and diseases that become much much more severe, exactly because our forests are weakening. And the best example is with this Norway spruce, the Picea habeas. This is the main timber species in Europe, almost in all countries. This is the major economic value in European forests. And yeah, this species is everywhere under pressure of bark beetle. And the bark beetle is a native species. It's an insect of our area. It has always been there. But yeah, because the spruce is suffering from drought, it was planted a lot in areas where we knew already 30 years ago that they would become marginal due to climate change, too low air humidity, things like that, like in the Belgian Ardennes. And yes, they are weakened, and so the bark beetle attacks. And it's really, yeah, it's a catastrophe for the forest. Well, maybe less for the forest, because of course you get regeneration of broadleaf species and so in the end there will be forest there, and completely different forest. But mainly for the industry that was hesitating too long to do something about it and go to more mixed systems with alternatives to spruce. And I think now in Central Europe we understood, and in Czech Republic, Germany, they are in the full situation of conversion, thinking about the forest of the future. But this denial continues in Scandinavia. Scandinavia, the whole economy is based on this huge forest areas with tree species. They have birch, pine and mainly spruce. And they do not seem to believe that also in their situation in the next 100 years it will become problematic.
So that needs to reach a more critical point in order for
yeah, but
there to be policy change.
The news of the last year is that the bark beetle entered in Scandinavia. They also thought it would not come because they are in the perfect climate and the perfect this and that, but it's there. So yeah, it might be too late already.
Yeah. It seems that this article is very much, and what your answers are very much related to another paper that you co-authored, which was published in February this year, and it's about the loss of competitive strength in European conifer species under climate change. As I understand, you and your colleagues looked at 9 major tree species across Europe and found that there was decreasing competitive strength for all of these conifers, while the major broadleaf deciduous species are increasing in strength. So from this, are we to understand that due to climate change, the compositions of forests across Europe is actively changing, that the pines and other conifers are giving way to deciduous trees, and this is not a small change across Europe. It's up to 19%, almost a fifth, of our forests could experience such a change in dominant tree species composition.
Yeah, very interesting and a bit in line with what we explained already. So, because of the new pressures, the relationship between tree species is shifting. Some species come in a situation which is more favorable for them because they like higher temperatures. They don't suffer too much from a few weeks or even months of drought. And then you have others that had a very strong position, but their position is weakened because they are, for example, very sensitive to low air humidity, to extreme temperatures, to droughts. And that's the shift you're seeing. And yes, it's correct that it corresponds to an overall shift from more conifer dominated to more broadleaf dominated. So we did a lot of species distribution modeling. It's another type of models. It's empirical models based on what are the requirements of species, and there also we see broadleaf species like the beech is potentially expanding a lot in southern Scandinavia. So for them it's an opportunity to plant. They can of course wait until the natural migration goes, but beech has a heavy seed. It's a very slow dispersal. After the ice ages, already 10,000 years ago, our climate was suitable for beech. But it took up till 3,000 years ago until the beech entered naturally our country. So to migrate back from the Pyrenees and from the southern Alps in Italy, it took more than 5,000 years. So if we don't help the system, it might be that the existing system collapse. You get some pioneer forest, and then it would take a long time before the new climate species get there. So that's why this assisted migration might be an option. We had another paper with another group of scientists in Nature in 2025 where we also looked at this trait groups, groups of characteristic species. So in the paper you mentioned between conifers and broadleaf, but that paper looks more into functional traits and functional syndromes. A syndrome is a combination of traits. For example, you have pioneer trees, so that means they have big leaves, they grow fast, they don't live long, and so on. And then you have climax, more conservative trees that are more conservative with water, grow slow, live long, have most of the time small leaves, also leaves that decompose slower, that are more recalcitrant, slower little decomposition. So it's another way of creating groups of species. And there also, in all these tree diversity experiments all over the world, well, we also used data from monoculture, common gardens where you compare monocultures. It's always thought that these pioneers or let's say acquisitive species, like we call them, are much more productive, or the better ones to use in productive forestry and commercial forestry. But from all these plantations, it looks like at least now in the last 20 years where we observe, it has turned around. It are the more conservative species that are the better growers. So in controlled circumstances, when all the conditions are perfect, yes, the pioneers grow faster than the conservative. But in the real world, with all these disturbances and these pressures and so on, the conservative strategy is over the long term the more productive one. And we clearly show that with plantations all over the world. So it's again an invitation to mix more and to also consider those climate species that theoretically are considered as lazy, slow, but they are much more stable in a context of risk and disturbances.
I see. And so, does this mean with the changes that also plants, animals, and also soils, for example, would also be changing in their compositions?
Yeah, that's a very interesting and intriguing question, and we don't know too much about that. But it's true that we consider already in these distribution models, where we see which areas would be suitable for species. We can do the same type of modeling, but for communities, because the species should never move alone. As you say, if you bring a southern oak here, probably it has certain mycorrhizal species with who it collaborates. It has certain insects that belong to it, so that's what we call this associated biodiversity. And of course it's important to know, will this new environment also be suitable for all those? And you can even ask yourself, is it not necessary also, if you think about the system migration, to move all of them together? So not only move trees, but move trees with a block of soil where the mycorrhiza and the soil organisms and everything is already in there, so that, let's say, the whole community is moving. But this is really in a beginning stage of research. It's important enough, but we don't know that much about that. Well, we know how important these communities are, and we know that trees are not standing alone. They are in complex relation with so many above ground and below ground organisms. it's the same with the human body. If we think that the human body is just us, no, we live in symbiosis with many species of microorganisms. I think I even read that the biomass of the microorganisms in our body is higher than our body mass itself.
Yeah, absolutely. Does this mean that the species and ecosystems relying on the current forest composition might die out or migrate to forests beyond Europe? If there is such an evolution, of course I imagine it would be very slow, but
yeah, it's very complex, and that's also why people of conservation are worried, of course. If our native tree species would disappear, what happens then with all the associated biodiversity? Of course, if we look south of us, the communities are not completely different. If you move south, gradually more drought-resistant southern species come in the same communities, and if you move north, the same happens. You see more cold-resistant species coming, but it's still the same community. So I think that we have to get a broader view on these communities, and also consider that these communities are not so strict as we have it in mind. If we go to Italy, for example, we might still find communities that we have in Belgium, something like a oak beech forest. It exists there as well, but instead of Quercus robur, it's Quercus ceres. It's still Fagus sylvatica, and maybe in the ground vegetation there's a number of species that are in common, but also a few extra species that they have in Italy, but not here yet. So it would not harm our ecosystem to have those new species, maybe losing a few that then might find their way in Scandinavia. So we are all connected, and that's why also it remains very important to try to conserve our local genetic material. Maybe it's not for us. Some of this material will get extinct here because it's not adapted anymore. But maybe that material is very useful for more northern territories that will need the genetic material of us. So anyway, genetic conservation stays very important in this this reality of shifting vegetations and communities.
If we could combine what we learn from these two articles, for example, the strengthening of the Aleppo pine tree dominance across the Mediterranean and the increasing risk of fire. Well, we know that pine wood burns very well, unlike or perhaps much better than the olive tree, which is known to be a denser type of wood and more resistant to fire. The anticipated spread of Aleppo pine does not bode well for resistance against the increasing threat of forest fires, does it? Perhaps we or government should be trying to integrate more olive trees into forests where Aleppo pines increase their presence.
A very interesting question, and I think it touches upon the whole challenge in the Mediterranean zone. And there's one element that is missing in the equation here. It's not only climate change, I would call it global change, because there's also a very important component of land use change that we need to understand these mega fires. You know, the Mediterranean zone has been traditionally deforested a long time ago, already in the time of the ancient civilizations, for agriculture and livestock farming. And so during many centuries the forest index was very low in the Mediterranean. But because of abandonment of all this marginal agricultural land, there has been a very fast expansion of the forest. And it's new, natural forest, because it's not, in most cases it's not planted, just it comes back because people abandon the cropland or the grazing land. And just to give you an idea about how important this happening is, for Catalonia, a situation I know well. In the year 1900 the forest index was 5% of the area, and now it's 65%. So Catalonia moved from a forest poor area comparable to Ireland to a forest rich area comparable to Finland over just a period of 50 to 100 years time. And so most of that forest is young pioneer forest of Aleppo pine, and it covers the full landscape. It's connected. Before you had a mosaic landscape, an olive grove, some grazing area, a little village, some agroforestry, a bit of everything. So there was, for the fires, a lot of barriers. The farmers put the fire just to burn the harvesting residues, and the fire went until the edge of the parcel and it stopped. But now, yeah, the probability that somewhere a little accident of a little not taking care enough, a cigarette on the railroad, a little spark, yeah, here and there it happens, and yeah, the ignition is enough to have a big fire. And then, yeah, the fire doesn't stop. It goes, when there's already a bit of broadleaf, there's a ladder. It goes from a ground fire to a crown fire, and then you get a fire, yeah, if the meteor conditions are then with strong wind, no rain. It moves very fast to what we call an uncontrollable fire. And there's nothing and nobody that can do something against that. The only thing they can still do is try to save lives and property, houses, but for the rest, just waiting and hoping that the wind changes. And so, yeah, like that you get fires. Yeah, and there's no limit because this forest is continuous. So yeah. Then you get fires in the order of 10,000 up to 100,000 hectares, tremendous. And so yeah, I would say that it's not climate change which is the main cause of that, it's land use change. And of course both reinforce each other. So, but to find solutions for that, it's also in the land use the solutions are. Of course in the climate change, but that's international policies. That doesn't look too good. But to create a fire-resilient landscape, there's a lot of options there. And of course we need to find win-wins between economy, recreation, conservation, fire prevention. So one good thing is already to put half of the money that we put now in firefighting, all the fancy airplanes and stuff. You take half of that money and you put it in prevention to recreate the mosaic. It was also, I think, a problem of the paradigm. Most people in the Mediterranean, they have grown up from school. Even nowadays, biologists, conservationists, foresters, I see it among colleagues. In the universities, they are very much taught that the biggest enemy of the Mediterranean forest is the goat. And we need to eliminate the livestock, but yeah, we have come to a situation where there's so little livestock that we need the livestock to keep the forest biomass lower and to create these barriers and this mosaic. So I was invited as an author in the State of the Mediterranean Forest report of FAO. I think every 5 years they have the State of the Mediterranean Forest. And so under ecosystem services, I wrote a list of emblematic species of the Mediterranean that are providing a lot of ecosystem service. So as a provocation, I put the goat there as a typical important forest species. Yes, we need goats, and more than we have, at least in the northern Mediterranean. Some animals, some herbivore, that keeps the biomass in this forest relatively low, so that this uncontrollable mega fires do not become so bad. And it will be good also for biodiversity, because yeah, this dense, even-aged Aleppo pine forest, it kills all the little flowers and plants that were there before in the grazing lands, in the mosaic. So, and yes, there's hope, because with new technology, we could use all this wood for building, for chemical industry. So in wood building, nowadays they can build skyscrapers up to 25 stories with wood. Is a revolution. It's use cross-laminated timber. In fact, it's like weapon steel, weapon concrete with steel. They do it with steel with wood. And nowadays we don't need big trees anymore. You can take this Aleppo pine, it grows like that. You can all cut it in little pieces and then you glue it, cross-laminate it, and you make strong beams that can be used in building. So building industry is one of the main causes of global change of CO2 emissions. So we can transform it in carbon neutral by using more wood in the building industry. So that's the solution for this Mediterranean forest. Another one is the chemical industry. Nowadays the chemical industry is getting more sustainable by using other energy sources, but still the source material for making the plastics and the chemicals and whatever is all petrol. We can replace all that by wood. We made a publication a few years ago with our neighbors from chemical industry. They are able to produce everything in the chemical industry that is produced by petrol. We can do the same by wood, and we have calculated that we have sufficient sustainable wood in our European forest to replace the whole sector. It's interesting. The only thing we have to do, because we took into account the wood that is needed for the building industry and the paper and all the other things that wood is used already for. Also the amount of area that we need to protect, so 1/3 of European forest just under protection. The only thing we need to stop is using wood for biomass energy, because that's really a waste of beautiful molecules. If you consider the cellulose and the lignin that trees, such a beautiful complex molecules, and then we just burn that. This is really shame.
And do you think there'd be a lot of resistance to a change, a move away from biomass industry?
Yeah, but burning biomass is kind of it's more sustainable than petrol because
Right.
it's carbon neutral, more or less.
Right.
But again, do that at the end of life. That's a cascading principle in life cycle assessment. First use the wood for all kind of purposes until it's degraded and the only thing you can use is burn it. But not burn virgin wood. But so, no, I don't think it's too difficult. Instead of harvesting and putting into an electricity power plant, bring it to the chemical platform and do something useful with it. And yeah, anyway, we need to go to the real renewables, to the wind and the sun and the batteries and the whole stuff. Yeah.
All of which would require more awareness, more pressure, and policy change at the top.
Yes. First you need to see the opportunity, then you need to have people that are convinced, and then you need to think about how to stimulate.
Right.
It's always, how do they call it? Carrots, sticks and sermons.
Carrots, sticks and sermons. Yeah.
Yeah, the carrots are like subsidies.
Yeah.
The sticks, if you do it wrong, you're punished. Yes, and that's why I think in all these things, very often the fundamental science is there. We understand the problem, and even we have ideas about the technical solutions, but it does not happen. So the main challenge is social sciences. How to change beliefs, mentalities, decisions, get out of lock-ins.
Another question. It looks as though this second study, it was a very big one. There were over 30 researchers participating across forests. Is the use of AI now indispensable for your statistical analysis and data analysis? Is the use of AI transforming your research across large areas, large numbers.
Is
Plants
that
and species.
is this question out of a certain worry or?
No.
Yeah. No, but I think the word AI is covering a lot of things and maybe some confusion. We are not speaking about Gen AI here. We are just speaking about what before maybe we called machine learning techniques or complex empirical models. But we use that since a long time. Of course, they become always more powerful and performant. But I remember we had a project about modeling the effect of new afforestations on agricultural land, on ecosystem services, carbon sequestration, groundwater recharge, and nitrate leaching. And that project, it was a European project. We started it, I think, in 2003. So it's more than 20 years ago. And already then we modeled this with mechanistic models. Mechanistic models are in fact forest models which predict how the forest will develop and grow. But really, it are complex models that go really with mathematical equations in the behavior of the forest. So the photosynthesis, the evapotranspiration, the respiration, all these different processes are like modeled, and the result is a certain forest that is developing, growing, tree species that regenerate, biomass that is growing, and so on. But the advantage with such models is that they have a high level of complexity and they are sensitive to climate change, because if you put different temperature and precipitation, the model will react on that and will give a different outcome. So that's more interesting to think about the future than empirical models like the yield model that foresters traditionally use. They have measured a lot of trees and forests in the past, and then they predict the future with what they observed from the past. Of course, if the climate and the circumstances would be stable, that's really performing, but we know that this is not working anymore because the future is not the same as the past anymore. So the future is in these mechanistic models, which really have a mathematical detail about all this process in the forest. The problem is now that those models have become so complex, there's so much equations to describe this complexity of what the forest is doing, that they become slow. And if you want to run them for millions of pixels for every square kilometer of European land, even the mainframe computers, they take ages. It's a matter of cost. So already then in 2003 we had the idea to create a meta model, and it's very, very simple. In this in this complex model, you have the input variables like climate and your tree species that you put and the soil type, and then you do all this complex modeling, and then you have an output in terms of your ecosystem services, your growth, your nitrate leaching, your groundwater recharge, and so on. So this complex model, you don't want to ship it to the end user because they can't understand it's way too complex and too slow. So you just make a regression model between the input and the output. You see how the output reacts on a change in the input. This is like a very simple linear regression. So you make in fact an empirical model of your complex mechanistic model. At that time we called that a meta model. Now they call that an emulator. And in fact in this new paper in Science, it's exactly the same that we are doing. But of course everything in a very sophisticated way. But we run for different parts of Europe. We developed, parameterized and run this very complex island model, which is the model of the group of Rupert Seidel at the University of Applied Sciences in Munich. I would say this is the best mechanistic model on forest in Europe or in the world. It has a lot of detail. So that was run for many different situations in Europe. But then to make it let's say, light and elegant to model the future, a meta model was made of it. The input was related to the output, and we got a much more simple AI model that just relates input with output without knowing all this complexity of this mechanistic model that we put in between, and that becomes so powerful to predict the future, and is able to run as many pixels as you want because it's so fast. Yeah. That's in fact the whole idea behind this, and I would say it's it's really a breakthrough in forest modeling. And the other novelty was then, of course, to add the disturbances, not to only look at what happens on a daily basis, but also what happens with extreme events. Yeah.
Another question. How do you think society, governments, civil society might take action to reduce the threat to biodiversity that we've been talking about, that you are concentrating on in your research? Are there simple things or important things that steps that can be taken?
Well, you know, biodiversity loss and climate change, they're all, in fact, they're all the same. It's global change. It's unsustainable practice in the way humans manage the planet. And so, even in this context of changing political climate, where we focus much more on military security and so on and so forth, but as environmental problems continue to be, the worst thing is forget them and not do anything, because it will only get worse. This is again what we call a lock-in. The longer you wait, the more it costs, and the more risk of collapse of. It will not be the planet that collapses, it will be our socio-economic system. We will get into crisis if we don't do something in time.
Right.
Nature will solve its issues.
Right.
And so this awareness needs to be among citizens, among politicians, among captains of industry, and among decision makers. And we as scientists, we play a role in that. Also in our, we are not only scientists, we are also teachers. We educate. We knock on the door of our rector saying, complex system science, it should be a base course, also in the business school, things like that. Bit by bit you see things moving, always a bit too slow maybe, but So I think in the minds, people have quite a level of understanding of the issues. Maybe sometimes there's not sufficient political daring. Politicians are scared to do the wrong thing, because it are big steps in a bit unknown direction. But that's the way to go, step by step.
Yeah. From your position at KU Leuven, or from your experience here, how might you assess Belgium's role in reforestation and management? Is it moving slowly in the right direction?
We are a country with a lot of potential, because there's good universities, there's I would say a population with a lot of good professionals, people with a very nice background. I think technical skills, ideas, it can be a matter of export, and it happens also. We have NGOs, organizations, consultants that work worldwide in restoration of forests and so on. But it's really a bit of pity to see what are we able to realize in our own country. And just to give the example, here in the Flemish region, already in 1997, so that's 30 years ago, we had a new spatial planning for Flanders, and some of the aspects of that spatial planning were obligatory, others were optional. In the obligatory part, we had an expansion of the forest with area with 10,000 hectares, and that was based on science, also on political will. Almost all the political parties at the time, they had in their program, yes, our population is growing, is urban, we need more open space for people that don't have a private garden, and so on and so forth. And it's very shameless, but 30 years later, this very poor 10,000, because it's not much, if you know that every year 6,000 hectares of agricultural land is lost to urbanization in the same area. And then over 30 years of time, we are still not able to realize this 10,000 hectares of new forest land. And yeah, there's all kind of blockages. And the blockage is mainly in the agriculture sector. The agriculture sector says that they cannot miss a single hectare for food security, but the same agriculture sector releases every year 6,000 hectares to urbanization, and this is just happening. And some farmers also get rich of it by having this area sold to real estate companies and so. So my take there would be, yes, of course we need agricultural land for food, and if it depends on me, not a single hectare of agricultural land is still spilled to urbanization. I think we need to densify in the urban areas that we have already, which is a lot. It's some of the highest in the world. Something like 25% of the territory of Flanders is already an urban zone. And
but it involves changing the way people live, so people wouldn't necessarily all be building and buying and living in huge houses with big plots of land around them. Yeah. This is what we're pointing towards, isn't it?
That's a typical Belgian problem, eh? Belgians, their housing, they live with more square meters than any other European. Big houses, big gardens and everything. It was a privilege, but we can't keep that in the future. We will have to densify, and so it's a logical step that municipalities also allow, even in residential areas, to allow, for example, a big villa to destroy it and to put a flat, still having some green area, but maybe raising from 1 level to 3 levels. I think we really need to be aware not a single hectare of open land we can further destroy. This is really nonsense, but it still continues to happen. So that's the first understanding. And then between agriculture and forests, I really don't see the problem. If you're able to stop this loss of agricultural land because of urbanization, then I think the problem is solved. Then you could easily go from, instead of 10,000 to 50,000 hectares of forest expansion, still producing even more food. The only thing we have to do is also diminish our meat consumption. Young people are quite willing to maybe consume 20-30% less meat, and then this amount of land necessary for our forests will come free by itself, without any problem. Yeah. So there's a lot of non-debates that are always continue to fill. There's no place for forests. We miss agricultural land. Do something about it.
But it's more about connecting all of these issues. Really,
but
and the arguments, someone might think about meat eating, but really it's related to land, and it's related to land use, and also connected to forestry and so on.
And that's maybe a responsibility of science. I think science have been developed too long I would not say the Cartesian, there's something wrong with the Cartesian, but with splitting up in boxes. You see that very much in the medical world. Compartmentalization. Instead of seeing the big view, the complexity, the interactions. And this is what ecology is about. That's why also I find this domain so intriguing and so wonderful. But everything is related to everything. And if you start seeing that, the solutions become more obvious. And the non-solutions become also more obvious. The ways that are just, yeah.
So in a sense, we need to approach our problems with more complexity to start thinking about a more integrated, complex response that can affect more issues.
Yes,
more
and
directly.
we need to work on that in our educational system.
Right.
We have already now at KU Leuven, well, there's quite some efforts in the university on sustainability issues. We have a sustainability council, we have a vice rector sustainability, so the university is really working bottom up. That's really nice. And so one of the results is already that we have a course in global challenges. All the students of all the domains of the university can choose it as an option. It's not an obligation, it's an option. And so every year we have in this course 600 students that follow that. And it's also offered to people outside the university. So you can even follow that course. And I think every year we have between 1,000 and 2,000 people just following the course as well, online. And yeah, global challenges, one after the other. We look into demography, climate change, biodiversity, all the topics. Yeah, mobility. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the interactions.
Right. Yeah. Right. Professor Muys, it's really been very interesting to hear you talk about all these related issues and topics. And so I would like to thank you for your time and your very rich, nuanced, detailed answers. Thank you.